Having an advance directive and a living will is super important to make sure that your end of life wishes are followed if you are dying. However, as great as they are and how as important as they are, they also have a lot of limitations. Let me give you an example. My grandfather had his advance directives in place. He had his living will in place. He had his healthcare proxy in place. He had his power of attorneys in place. Everything was in place. Everything he was supposed to have done was done. He expressed that if he was dying, he did not want any sort of artificial feeding. So he didn't want a feeding tube placed. He didn't want to be fed artificially. The problem was that when he was in the hospital, he was declining. His health was declining. He wasn't getting better, but no one would tell my family that, yes, in fact, he was at the end of his life. And yes, in fact, he was dying. So that made it really difficult for family members of mine to be able to make that sort of decision, whether or not to try a feeding tube or not, because no one would say that he was in fact dying. There were some really blunt and direct questions that we had to know to ask the healthcare providers to help us make these decisions. So clearly, advance directives are super important because they can help guide decisions, but they're not the end all be all. They don't cover all the bases. They don't know all the possibilities that could happen when someone is at the end of their life. So having these types of conversations with those people that you love about what quality of life means to you, what's important to you in your life, are super important to be having.